You are listening to the 4th and 40 podcast presented by Dorm Room Sports.
Extra bright, I want y'all to see this. Turn up the lights in here, baby. You know what I need. Want you to see everything. Want you to see all of the lights. Fast cars, shooting stars, all of the lights, all of the lights.
Welcome back to the 4th and 40 podcast presented by Dorm Room Sports. On this special Father's Day edition, we have my dad, Lorin Grieber, tuning in with us. But first, we want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every week and showing your support every week on Twitter and the other socials that we get notifications from you guys, checking in on us, telling us what you want to see, and all the good stuff. But if you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our socials, the Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at 4th and 40 Pod. We will also be continuing to do our listener questions, and we want to thank you guys for your continued support. This week we didn't receive any, but we would like for you guys to keep sending in what you guys want to hear, and any questions you have for us. That's it for the announcements. Like I said, we have my dad on the show this week. Big Pops, Big Greebs, you here?
I'm here. Hey, boys.
How you doing?
What's going on?
We'll see how this goes.
First of all, there were questions because I submitted a question wondering why you're keeping Rugg on the pod since he appears to believe that Big Ben is better than Lamar Jackson, but that's another story for another day.
No, we can touch on that. I'd love to hear Rugg's response right now, actually.
Sure. Yeah, I think Lamar Jackson's obviously extraordinarily talented, and he made a huge leap forward last year. But Big Ben Roethlisberger is a two-time Super Bowl champion. It pains me to talk positively about him as a Ravens fan for the Steelers quarterback, but he has so many great abilities that Lamar is working to achieve. Big Ben's ability to extend plays, kind of brush off defenders, kind of complete big-time throws, command an offense, I think is at a level that Lamar is going to get to in a couple years. But Big Ben's big game experience and just experience carrying a winning team just puts him a little bit above Lamar right now.
Yeah, well, that's all good if he can get out of the hospital bed.
That's true. He's got the best abilities availability, and I mean, if he's not available this season, even though it's bad for the NFL, as a Ravens fan, it's definitely going to make our road easier.
And it'll make you be wrong on this pick.
Fine with me. but not necessarily though, because obviously if someone gets hurt, that doesn't change his overall talent level. He's just not available to play. And when he comes back, he might not be as good.
You talk about Ben in the past. We're talking about who is. It's a present-day question. Who's a better quarterback right now?
And I believe in the present day when Ben gets back on the field, we're going to see the same Big Ben Roethlisberger we've seen for many years.
There can't be conditions. It is right now. It is what it is. If this, if that, whatever. Lamar is. Big Ben, it's like, well, if. So, anyway, I don't want to bring up the past. You guys vetted that significantly last week. So I thought I'd throw that out to Rugg and give him a hard time.
It's a good debate. It's just about a philosophical way of how we're looking at these lists.
It's a terrible debate. You're just wrong.
Yeah.
You're just wrong. It's a terrible debate.
That's the same way me and Zach were thinking. That's the same argument we made.
All right, well, moving on. This weekend, we actually had a few sporting events, or one going on right now, the RBC Heritage down in South Carolina. Great tournament. Big potential for today, huge potential. But yesterday we had the Belmont Stakes. Tiz the Law was odds-on favorite, and yes, I can say I bet on this because I did bet on this, and I'm allowed to bet on this one. But it was free money. I mean, it was an 8-horse length race. Win. it was free money. I mean, I had him for 2 units, but I had the 8-2 in Exacto box for a unit, so I didn't capitalize completely because 8-9 hit, but 8-2 didn't. But 2-unit bet on the Belmont Stakes.
What is your
I don't think
1
anyone else
unit
can
bet?
bet on it. My one, it's just a 10
pennies.
No, it's not 2 pennies.
Is it $10? That's
$10
reasonable.
unit.
I thought it was 5. That's good that you got it up to 10.
No.
But yeah, you made the right call betting on that because that was free money. He was an overwhelming favorite. He ran like it for sure.
It looks like the Triple Crown, if assuming it all happens, he will take.
But as we're talking about other sports and sports that are less likely, I came across a list yesterday. It's from Unbiased America Sports about the top 60 most difficult sports. And there's one ranking on this list. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not. Gymnastics was at 8, ahead of baseball, soccer, golf, and many other pretty difficult sports. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that's absurd. Clearly, whoever made that list has never played baseball or golf in their life.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, baseball is always hated on. Everyone always likes to say how easy baseball is. You just stand around, do nothing, have your thumb up your ass. But until someone actually has to throw a baseball or hit a baseball, everyone then they start to realize it. But I mean, gymnastics, like, come on, like that's bullshit. I don't know who the fuck made this to just satisfy the woman that were looking at it. I mean, like, they just needed to throw something up there to make them happy. Like, I would argue that figure skating is harder than gymnastics. Like, there's no fucking way that gymnastics is
I don't even think that's an argument. I think that's a real thing. I think it is way harder.
Okay, you guys are all idiots. All right. Rug, you played baseball, right?
I did.
Okay, Zach, you play baseball, right?
Yes.
Aiden, did you ever play softball or baseball?
Yeah, I played baseball all the way up until high school.
Any of you idiots ever do the splits? Exactly.
Well, I've never
anybody
to.
Anybody. It's harder, okay? Getting on a pommel horse, just doing some of the moves, the flexibility. You crazy? Gymnastics is extremely difficult.
I'm not saying it doesn't deserve to be on the list, but I don't think it should be higher than baseball or golf.
Not harder hitting a baseball or placing a golf ball in the exact spot, or even rugby at 13. I mean, I played rugby for like 2 weeks, and that was long enough for me. There are all these different European terms and keywords. I just like, nah, not for me. I can't. The fact that I don't even like gymnastics. There's no doubt that the athleticism with the activity is there, but
was the list discussed in terms of the professional level or just in general?
It was just in general.
Okay, because I think you can talk really about any sport at the highest level is extremely specialized, right? I mean, anybody can sit there and kind of throw a football, but to put it on a person with guys bearing down on you, looking over guys that are 6'7" when you're only 6'3", okay, it's all real hard. Trying to hit a baseball, always talked about one of the most difficult things to do in sport. Okay, but gymnastics, you can name it. At the highest level, it's extremely specialized. But generally, for the average person, right? I mean, you just look at the fact of how many kids are playing high school baseball versus how many kids are doing high school gymnastics. Part of it's a facilities issue, but part of it is there's so many injuries in gymnastics because of the strain it puts on the human body. You just can't make these moves. I mean, some of that stuff, the iron cross on the rings, you can't do that. You know, but Joe Blow can get on the mound 60 feet 6 inches and just, you know, chuck it. So I'll disagree. I think gymnastics is probably one of the most difficult sports out there in a general perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. I don't know enough about it to even argue against it. I know it's probably pretty hard, but
you ever walk across a balance beam? You know, I mean, I don't know how long it is. It's 4 inches wide. I could get up there for maybe a half a second. I mean, it's crazy.
My problem, though, with gymnastics is that there's no clear winner. I mean, if you need judges from 7 countries to vote on who won in the Olympics, I mean, could we argue that that's more of an activity than a sport?
So any sport that has judging is supposed to head-to-head competition.
No, but if there's not a clear winner per se. Like even in boxing, when there's one man going another man, there's usually a clear winner, even if there's judges picking the winner.
Do you think skiing is a hard sport?
You can make the argument skiing's not a sport. When you have a skiing race, there's a clear winner.
How is there a clear winner?
Because you're racing down a mountain.
Okay,
isn't it a race?
But the conditions change from skier to skier. I mean, are X Games, is that a sport?
Yeah, because there's a clear winner. There's still a clear winner in all those sports.
We're judged. That's all.
I'm just raising the question.
That's just a bad argument because soccer ends in ties. There's plenty of sports that end in a tie.
But there's still 2 teams competing against each other that have a clear winner at the end of the season, even if there's a game that ends in a tie.
Well, in the Olympics, there's a clear winner too, whoever wins the gold medal.
Well, yeah, but depending on the actual sport, though. How that gold medal's chosen still
Even
matters.
Watching with a naked eye, you can tell who's at a higher level than others, even if you don't watch it. You can just tell who's more elite.
In gymnastics, I don't know about that.
So you're telling me every 4 years during the Olympics, if you don't catch 15 minutes, you can't tell if one person is better than the other?
I mean, that's just a very general statement. We got to look at a specific sport, a specific group of individuals
Yeah, I'm
competing
speaking
against each other.
specifically about gymnastics. If you turn it on every 4 years during the Olympics, if you don't watch it avidly, you can't
Could
tell the
I? No,
difference.
probably. I don't think I could tell who's better than the other that easily. No.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious.
How much
Yeah,
gymnastics have you watched in the Olympics?
I turn it on whenever it's on, and I watch the Olympics pretty avidly when it comes on every 2 years between summer and winter.
I'll take your word for it then.
You don't watch it? You don't watch the Olympics ever?
No, I do, but you're talking about gymnastics specifically. Like you're just.
Well, I'm not
resident
sitting there
expert.
watching it for 12 hours, but if it's on, I'll watch it. Like I'll watch the main events.
But it doesn't stick in your head though.
Well, sure it does if
They're
it's
all kind of-
impressive enough.
It is very impressive, but you're acting like you're sitting here differentiating between
All right,
top
well,
gymnastics.
Well, people
let's-
still know who
let-
Simone Biles is.
Sure, she's incredible. I'm not taking anything away from her.
What was the top 10, Rug?
Yeah, all right. I want to get boxing's 1, ice hockey's 2, football's 3, basketball's 4, wrestling's 5, martial arts is 6, tennis is 7, gymnastics 8, baseball, softball 9, soccer 10. Now, what stands out to me is boxing 1, martial arts 6, and tennis 7. All 3 of those, I think, are way down the list compared to some of the other.
Oh, tennis isn't down the list. I don't think tennis is down the list.
Tennis is not that hard.
Tennis is
not that
very hard.
Did you
Tennis,
say tennis is
I don't-
7? Tennis was 7?
yeah.
Tennis was 7.
Tennis was easier than gymnastics?
No,
harder.
tennis was ranked harder than gymnastics. Which I agree with.
Right,
I think
right. That's crazy.
Yeah, I
I don't.
gymnastics
I think
harder
the
than
amount
tennis.
of. I think any sport that's a technical sport like that should be ahead of gymnastics.
That's crazy. I mean, how many 60-year-olds
then.
how many 60-year-olds do you see on a playground tennis court versus doing gymnastics? None. I mean, it's craziness.
Well, we're talking about the elite
Yeah.
level. We're not talking about Joe Schmo hitting a tennis ball back and forth.
All right, well, that's a different discussion. I thought we were talking generally. If they're talking about it at the elite level, that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I guess it really does matter what level you're looking at. If it's in the general sense, then I watch 60-year-olds play tennis all damn day.
What does the list even
And-
clarify? Are they talking about the elite
No,
athletes, or are
it
they
doesn't.
talking
They
about?
didn't.
not-
They
it
didn't
does not
clarify.
clarify.
They were just talking about
Does not
just
clarify.
general. Like I didn't really see a lot of. They didn't give a lot of parameters about how they were ranking this. I mean, that's what makes it so subjective when we actually talk about the list. But I
Mhm.
enjoy the hell out of just pissing people off and just picking out certain sports that people think should be higher or lower.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that golf is at 51 is fucking bullshit. 'Cause
Yeah, that's
if
a joke.
anyone plays golf knows that golf is probably one of the hardest sports in the world to just do on a daily basis. Like, to be able to do what these guys do on tour day after day is insane. So,
Where do they rank
I'm
fishing?
sorry.
60.
Fishing is
60 out of 60.
Fishing is 60 out of 60. Billiards is 59 out of 59. Shooting is 58 or 59 out of 60. Shooting is 58 out of 60. And then bowling, there's equestrians coming in at a whopping 54.
What about the biathlon?
So, dude, cheerleading should be dead last on this list.
But cheerleading's 52nd. I missed this. Cheerleading's
Yeah.
one behind golf.
Yeah, cheerleading's one behind golf.
The resume for cheerleading has nothing to do with athletic ability. Oh, jeez. Oh, man. I missed that golf is one ahead of cheerleading.
Golf is one ahead of cheerleading.
Well,
I mean,
the other thing that's stupid is cheerleading. There's a lot of gymnastics in cheerleading, so how can you have one really low and one really high? That's a stupid.
well, I think they're talking about cheering as just like the general cheering, not the tumbling part. I'm guessing, because if you have gymnastics and cheerleading separated,
Well, if they're keeping the 2 and 2 separated, then cheerleading is not even a sport.
yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. That's if I'm saying gymnastics is not a sport, cheerleading is definitely not a sport.
Bobsledding's 28.
Gee,
What the fuck do you do in a bobsled that's so hard? Why is auto racing behind bobsledding? What the fuck?
Yeah, that's actually a joke. Versus driving a car 200 miles an hour in the midst of 30 other cars around a narrow track versus fucking sledding down a hill. Are we serious?
So it sounds like
Field hockey 17. Field hockey 17.
whoever did this list did the top 10, and then they got bored and just started.
It
Dude,
definitely
field
seems
hockey.
that way. You can
How
just
is
tell, like,
speed
they picked
skating
the
ahead
10
of figure
sports they
skating?
knew.
Oh my god! The
All
more
right.
you get into this, look closer. All right,
We
well, we got to move on
Yeah,
before
let's
this
move
takes
on.
forever.
Let's get to the
We got to move
rundown.
on. Yeah, it's all right. We'll go ahead and get to the rundown. Mark, go ahead and go first.
Yeah, I want to talk about a little bit about the 2004 draft and how it's the best draft in NFL history. I mean, I'm going to toss a couple names at you guys and see where everyone stands, see if you guys agree with me or not. Number 1, Eli Manning. Number 2, Larry Fitzgerald. Number 4, Phillip Rivers. Number 5, Sean Taylor. We also have Kellen Winslow, Roy Williams, D'Angelo Hall, Ben Roethlisberger, Jonathan Vilma, Vernon Carey, Vince Wilfork. I mean, we got a couple of big names here. What do you guys think? We got Michael Jenkins also.
I think what stands out to me is you look at the draft was 16 years ago, and you can count the number of players still playing, and that tells you the whole story.
And the trio of QBs, in addition to all the names you just mentioned, and of course Sean Taylor as well. I mean, you just got guys that people 20 years from now are going to remember.
Yeah, Larry Fitzgerald too.
He's still playing. I mean, there's just the draft is a far-reaching impact. It's certainly one of the better ones that we've seen.
All right, Zach, you want to go ahead and give yours?
All right. So for mine, I'm touching on the injuries of Deebo Samuel and Brandon Brooks early in the summer. I mean, this is before anyone's doing anything really. So it's kind of surprising that two big names. I mean, Deebo Samuel was poised to probably be you guys would say the best receiver for 49ers this year.
Oh, he was definitely going
With
to
the
be.
loss of Emmanuel Sanders, they're relying on him even heavier than they were last year.
And they traded Marquise Colston.
Rugg, you can give a little bit better of the details of the foot injury because I know you dealt more with it when it came to Marquise Brown. It was kind of a similar situation, but it actually isn't now that they got the results back. That it's not the.
So yeah, Deebo Samuel, the real bad foot injury you see in football is called a Lisfranc injury. And essentially, when a guy gets a Lisfranc injury, he's going to get surgery and be out for 8 months. Deebo Samuel does not have this injury. I think it's called a Jones fracture. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it's usually a 10-week injury. But the problem is, even there was a receiver for 49ers named Trent Taylor who had this exact same injury in training camp. He was supposed to be back in 10 weeks. Unfortunately, he was not able to come back last season. So it's really, if you're a 49ers fan, you're very concerned right now. So even though the timeline says he'll be back week 1, or let me think, 10 weeks, probably just after, right around week 1. But it's definitely something to be concerned about if you're a 49ers fan.
And then Brandon Brooks, probably, we were talking about this before the show, either the debatably first or second best O-lineman for the Eagles on a stacked O-line, is going to be out for the whole season with a torn Achilles. And that's huge for the Eagles. It probably disrupts a lot of their plans that they had in the running game, especially in between the tackles. And, I don't know what more to say than this is just a huge loss, especially for the whole season.
It's a huge gain for me as a Redskins fan. I'll say that much, but I feel bad for the guy.
It's a bad omen for a team that's all they did last year was struggle with injuries.
Rugg, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I want to talk about a young man in the Baltimore area who is an inspiration for all of us. His name is Mo Gaba. He kind of is known among Baltimore sports fans for he's a delightful little kid. He just graduated from 8th grade. He's blind and he's battling cancer. And he always calls into the talk shows at 105.7 The Fan and makes predictions. He just loves the Orioles and Ravens. He threw the first pitch out at Camden Yards. He announced a Ravens draft pick on a Braille card and was the first to do in NFL history. And there was a campaign to raise a bunch of money for him recently, in addition to a parade they held for his graduation. And he's just the nicest kid. I mean, we all complain sometimes, but it just puts things in perspective on how lucky we are and just to be appreciative of all we have in life. And this kid just has had more bad luck than many people combined. And he just keeps fighting, has a great attitude, and just an inspiration to everybody.
Yeah, well, I know that holds close to your heart because he is involved in a lot of the Baltimore sports. And I was thinking that was going to be potential Rugg's corner, but you never said anything about it when I saw a little bit of the headlines about him. But
yeah, I was at the Orioles game. He threw out the first pitch for. I remember it was really cool. He's in a wheelchair too. I mean, it's just the poor kid's just been through more than most people can imagine at a young age. But there's a lot of good things. People raising money. I think he raised like over $20,000 for his family as he's battling because his cancer kind of took a turn for the worse. And I mean, we all just wish him the best.
All right, moving on. We want to talk a little bit about Jamal Adams and this fucking lunatic that thinks he can go ahead and run the NFL and talk about where he wants to play while he's under contract. And Jamal Adams, for those you don't know, is requesting a trade. He basically requested a trade I don't know if he's requesting a trade or said that he would be
He
open
made a
to
list
trade to these
of
teams.
about, I think, 7
Yeah.
teams he wants to go to, like the Cowboys, the 49ers, the Seahawks, the Ravens, a few other teams. He's essentially, but he's saying he is requesting a trade. He wants out from the Jets.
Yeah, that's what I took from it, is that he wants out. But the way he's doing it, he sounds like he's being a little fucking bitch, and he's just not another player. I like to talk about all these guys that are so fucking selfish and don't want to do anything for the team. And this is just another example that he's just not going to play for the team. He's an I guy and he wants to go somewhere. And I would never, ever trade for a guy like that as a GM, because he's just going to give up on you at some point if you guys start to not do well. So
I have the list real quick if you guys want me to read it out for you guys, the list of the teams.
Yeah.
Do we know why he wants out?
Yeah, because he's not getting a new contract that he wants. He's been demanding a contract for over a year when he still has 2 years left on his deal.
And he's upset with the Jets because it came out that Joe Douglas, the GM, answered a phone call from the Cowboys. Just your basic phone call for trade discussions around the deadline. It wasn't like he was shopping Adams, and he's very upset about that.
All right, so the teams are the Ravens, Cowboys, Texans, Chiefs, Eagles, 49ers, and Seahawks.
I mean,
how do you feel about that Ravens destination list, Rug?
I understand the appeal as a Ravens fan because as a player, we know he's the second best player in the NFL, but the Ravens already have the best secondary in football. And I'm going to have to give up 2 first-rounders for him and a 4th, which is the potential asking price. I don't want him. And Ravens fans who are listening, Eric DeCosta will not trade 2 first-rounders and a 4th-rounder for Jamal Adams. That's not his MO. That's not how the Ravens do business. So if you're going to – I know people want to talk about Adams to the Ravens because, I mean, the Ravens are a hot destination right now. Who wouldn't want to play for a team like the Ravens with their organization? But it's not going to happen unless the price comes down. And I don't want it to, frankly. He's Jamal Adams is right now is delusional. I mean, Patrick Mahomes doesn't even have a new contract yet.
Why? Yeah, I hate when players do that shit when they still have multiple years left on their deal, demanding more money.
Because it's not that he's demanding money; he's demanding an insane amount of money. There was an ESPN report last year that interested teams are under the impression that Adams wants $20 million a year, which is money that top pass rushers would get. So basically, he thinks that there was a report that he assesses himself on the level of like Tom Brady and Aaron Donald regarding his trade value, and that's insane. He's never won anything.
I disagree with you there because the market's just going to keep going up. By the time his contract's over in 2 years, that's going to be the market price probably. Byron Jones just got 18. Jalen Ramsey, when he hits the market after this upcoming season, that's going to be the money he's probably going to get.
But what's going on right now with the cap? COVID. The cap's not going up this year. He's crazy to demand a contract, right? And especially right now. Without COVID, it'd already be crazy. But
same thing with Dalvin Cook.
So it's estimating that there's going to be a $3 billion decline in revenue with the lack of fans. And that's assuming we even have a season. I mean, that's a totally different discussion we can even get to. But assuming we have a season, they're estimating the cost of the league in $3 billion, which is not going to help the salary cap go up. So if the salary cap's not going to go up, why are the Jets, who Jamal Adams not even a free agent? He's not even a free agent after this season. He's a free agent after next season. He's going to get paid handsomely in his 5th-year option. Why would the Jets ever sign him to an insanely expensive extension? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay, back up. Yeah. Where are you coming up with $3 billion net loss this year, or the
estimate? That was an estimation from some league. It was a source in the Players Association estimated that there'd be a not loss overall, $3 billion less in revenue than they would get in a normal season.
Okay, because I mean, what's the general gross revenue for the NFL?
It's about $15 billion, I think, is the exact number.
So they're saying it's a 20% hit. I don't buy that because the significant majority of revenue to the NFL is TV revenue, and that's going to go up. So ticket sales, concessions, all that kind of stuff, it is what it is. And the season ticket holders are still having to buy season tickets. They're going to lose it. I mean, they're not going to. Some may not renew, but in the heavy markets, if you don't renew your season tickets, you're out. You don't get to renew it the following year at the bottom of the list. So I mean, I don't know where they're coming up with that. But that's crazy.
Well, I just want to say, about the TV contract. I want to say something about the TV contract. That might not, the value of that might not go up. Now, I'm not saying I disagree or agree with this. I'm just going to put this out there with the kneeling that's going to occur in the NFL. The amount of
contract's locked
viewers
in.
that they may lose.
Yeah, the contract's locked in.
They're getting paid whatever they're getting paid.
Yes, but ad revenue and stuff, don't they get? Doesn't that?
Well, no, that's but that doesn't that's the network side that would lose money, not the NFL. That they're locked into a national broadcast deal, and they that's not going to change for now. They're locked into that money unless games are.
Then why are you
canceled.
saying? Then why are you saying the TV contract is going to increase, Dad?
The ratings will increase because people aren't going to go to the game. So those who don't go to the game are going to want to watch. People are dying for sports. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, what that'll do in turn is that'll probably increase the NFL's negotiating leverage for their next TV deal. I'm not sure exactly when that'll be up, but that could
the end of next year
help
as well.
Yeah, so they're probably already negotiating. Like baseball just signed a new deal with TBS for $1 billion a year, and so which is a huge increase from their last deal. So if that does happen, that'll help NFL revenue in the long run. But an NFL team looking towards next season, trying to predict their cap, doesn't want to overpay Jamal Adams. So that's where it's just so unique with COVID right now and what the actual revenue might be.
Yeah. I mean, Rug, you make a good point. I mean, I'm thankful that I still got a job through this whole thing. And, you know, all of these professional athletes, I think they also should be thankful that they got a job. They get paid on a per game basis. So, you know, no one's getting paid until they actually play. Now, so the only money that they got, and they all know this, especially in the NFL, is the upfront signing bonus money. There's no guaranteed contracts in
Mm-hmm.
So this guy's an idiot for wanting to get out. He should want to, you know, stay and kind of like Zach alluded to, be a good teammate and be there for his teammates. All that said, when a guy wants out, you know, either he is really a dick, you know, and he's just kind of going down the OBJ route, or you never know what's been said behind closed doors, right? Who knows if the coach ever made a promise or the GM ever made a promise and said, hey, if I ever get a call, I'm going to let you know, right? And some of these players, if you lie to them once, they're done with you. They don't want to mess around. Now, I'm not saying that's happened, but you always got to kind of, you know, you look at it from a fan's perspective and what's been published in the media, you really don't know what's going on behind closed doors, because anybody who's played organized sports before knows sometimes coaches say one thing and then they do another thing, and it really pisses a player off at all levels.
I think we've all been there playing our fair share of sports.
It's a good point. It's definitely something to consider when it comes to him being upset with the trade rumors. The only problem with Jamal Adams, though, is, and Mike Francesa in New York, who's of course does sports radio and covers the Jets, he made a comment about a year and a half ago that I think still rings true. Is Jamal Adams has consistently separated himself from the team through their struggles. You always see after a couple of different losses, he always say, "Well, it's not me. Those guys are struggling. I'm doing my part." Now he might be right. Technically, he's right. But you don't say that, because at the end of the day, you win as a team and you lose as a team. And I think he's shown a pattern of behavior over the last couple of years of just attempting to separate himself from the team and make it a little bit more about him and pointing out, "Oh, I'm not the problem." I mean, you're on a losing team. If you're right, you don't say that. And I think he has an inflated ego right now, and that's coming out in this trade request just as much as maybe a comment he didn't like or misinterpreted from the team may have.
Yeah, no, you're right. It may just be as simple as he's a dick, right? He's immature and he's a dick, you know, but there also could be something else back there. So,
well, I want to get to something real quick that's not on here, but I want to talk about my dad's football career real quick and his notorious, since we have him here, his notorious his link to fame, his connection to fame, which is Rob Davis, the Cowboys head assistant coach.
So in the Shippensburg alumni rag, they said that he was assistant head coach. That can't be right. I mean, it makes sense he's with Dallas. Rob played with the Packers for like 15, 16 years as a long snapper. So he was with Mike McCarthy for the significant majority, if not all of his playing career, as a long snapper. So for him to go to Dallas as a coach can make sense, and maybe he's like an assistant special teams coach type of thing, because long snapping is a skill. And I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, they time these guys from first motion to when it hits the guy's hands, whether it's the punter or the field kicker, because it's a skill. But the alumni rag had him as assistant head coach, and that's got to be a misprint.
I want to talk about him just destroying your hands while he snaps to you, and how you just sat on the bench with him, became best friends with him, just sitting there talking, dribbling a football, being a backup QB.
Yeah, I was a career backup at Shippensburg. It's a long story, but I was slated to start heading into my junior year, and some, talk about coaches saying one thing and doing another thing. And long story short, that coach ended up getting fired after my junior year. So they bring in a new coach, and they brought in a transfer from Michigan State, and he ended up starting over me my senior year. This is a guy rolls in with his, he's, I don't know, 6'2", 6'3", 2 1/4, runs a 4.6, 4.5 40, just tremendous athlete, just clearly better than me. And he ended up, he was, in my wedding, we became best friends, really good friends, and did a road trip out to East Lansing one year, which was great. He rolls in with his Aloha Bowl ring, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm riding the bench again this year. But so, backup quarterbacks, they used to, now punters do it, but they used to hold for extra points. And this guy would, he'd fire it back there. It's like you got to be ready. And if it doesn't hit the right spot, if it gets into your body or something, if it's a little too, inside, it's tough to handle. And of course, if you drop it, it's your fault. So that's my claim to fame is, my 6 degrees of separation in NFL is now through Rob Davis. So, but it's a funny story on how he got to the NFL. You talk about, players' paths and things like that. And it's, every now and then it's documented. But I'm sitting there, I'm with my buddies. We're playing cards one Monday night. We're watching Monday Night Football. And all of a sudden, I thought I saw him on the field. Again, it's a Packers game or whatever. And next thing, Al Michaels yells out, Rob Davis on the tackle. And I'm like, what? You got to be kidding me. And I call my buddy. I was like, are you watching the game? That was Rob. And it turns out the guy was in working for Carolina Trucking or something like that. He was out of football. He was a stud at Division II Shippensburg. I think he was an All-American defensive tackle, whole thing. He actually was from, I think, Forestville, Maryland, which is how we became friends, just because at Shippensburg back in that day, most of the players were from Pennsylvania. So we were, one of probably 3 guys on the roster from Maryland. And their long snapper got, sick or hurt or injured or something. And they call Rob on a Thursday night. This is before the Monday night game. They're like, hey, come try out. He tries out on a Friday. They sign him. He's in Monday Night Football that Monday and makes a tackle. It was unbelievable. And then guess what? He didn't give up that position for 15, 16 years from that point forward. It's a pretty amazing story.
Now he's assistant head coach.
That's pretty cool.
McCarthy.
Now he's with the Cowboys. Yeah.
Not a shabby paycheck either. League minimum's $750,000 or something now.
I don't know what it is for coaches, whatever, but it's a path if he's going to get into coaching. A lot of these coaches they go do a stint, that kind of thing. I don't know where Rob is in his life. I kind of lost touch with him over the years, but congratulations to him. And I hate that I've got to now root for the Cowboys, but I'm just going to root for their punt team. So, their special teams, and we'll go from there. Because
hopefully we see the special teams a lot for the Cowboys this season. A lot of punt team and not a lot of explosive offense.
Moving on, COVID-19 has been in the headlines because, it just hasn't gone away, and it's gotten worse in the case numbers, which we've discussed multiple times. It really doesn't affect the regular person on a day-to-day basis, knowing what the disease is. But for sports, it's taking a step in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I have to kind of do a 180 from the direction I was at last week, where I thought, everything's going to be fine. We're playing sports this fall. It's happening regardless. And after all these training camps with all these colleges, this summer ball, it's
you jinxed it.
Yeah, I might have jinxed it. Everyone's catching corona now. It's a shit show.
Well, the issue becomes the death rate for me, right? Because we all get sick, and to me, it's really, I'm not going to say COVID's the same as the flu, but if a player gets sick with anything contagious, they're not coming to practice anyway. The only difference here is kind of the contact tracing aspect of it, where if you get sick, you're going to contact trace, any player with you. So if it's a quarterback, pretty much anybody in the quarterback meetings, you're getting tested, right? And the problem is it's like you saw on the PGA. I don't know who came down positive, and so then they tested 14 guys that he was in contact with, and they all came back negative. But there's an incubation period on this thing. They got to test those guys again, probably every day or every 2 or 3 days, to see if they come down with it because of the incubation period. So it can still continue, but all of a sudden, it's not just those 28 players that have come down with it that are going to now be quarantined. It's the 10 or 12 players that they all came in contact with that are also going to be out and quarantined for another, 12 or 14 days or whatever it is. And how do you run practice with it, especially in football? And how do you do all that? when you take it to the NFL, I've always said, are they going to allow, significant roster increases to allow for that? Because it's just going to happen. It's unrealistic to think people aren't going to get sick. But when one guy gets the flu, he's out, right? But you don't take all 25 people that he's come in contact with the last 2 days out of the game, and that's the difference.
Yeah,
So-
that was my argument last week. We have to treat it like if it's a sprained ankle or something like that. If these guys are out for a week.
Well, no, the difference. See, that's where you're wrong, Mark. Because the sprained ankle isn't contagious. You have to now test everybody the guys come in contact. It's highly contagious. It's more contagious than the flu.
Well, yeah,
so you got to test those guys, and those guys are all going to be out too because you don't want those guys infecting the rest of the team. So anybody who's come in contact with, call it patient 0, they're out, right? All 12 of them or 5 of them or however many it is, because you can't run the risk of the entire team getting infected.
Well, that's where I changed my tune. I agree with you 100% now because the NFL put out a plan where they're going to test guys 3 times a week, and I don't think that's enough. I think you have to test these guys every day.
Well, with baseball, Rug, weren't they talking about testing them before they came to the park, before they started the game, after they were going to test them 3 times a day, I thought.
Well, they actually were going to give everyone a thermometer. And basically, in order to enter the park, you had to be asymptomatic, but even being asymptomatic, of course, with this virus doesn't even guarantee that you're not carrying it. I'm not 100% sure if they were going to test every day. I think it was a couple times a week. I just think they were going to have them take their temperature every day.
You ever see one of these tests given? I mean, like, they don't just swab your nose like it's kind of akin to the old strep test where they just touch the bag. They're ramming this stick that's probably 6 inches long. You tilt your head back. It goes all the way up your nose and kind of down to the back of your throat. I'm waiting for the stat to come out to say, yeah, that's not good for you to have have them scratch the back of your throat 3 times a week. There's residual effects of something like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I got a blood test, an antibody test, and I was disappointed to find out that I am negative. I did not have it. But
we kind of left the backstory out that you were sick in, what was it?
Yeah, I was really sick late February, like 10 days. I had a cold, fever, just all the cough. And I was, obviously when I was reading different things about how COVID had been here for a while before they even detected it because we didn't have the testing capacity back then. I wonder, and my mom got a test too. She was sick. We wondered if we had it, and I think what they're finding out is there was a while where there was a lot of samples being taken in areas where they thought that more people had COVID than actually detected, and there's some truth to that. But I think they're finding now too, because MLB did a widespread study, and I think they found that there was a smaller percentage of people with antibodies than they thought. So I think the question is how many people have had it already, and if less people had it already than we might have thought, say, a couple weeks ago, does that mean that we're even more susceptible to a second wave? And if we do have a second wave and everyone's getting it, then there's no way you can think about having a season, and it's going to be very hard to contain.
Well, I want to talk about the football aspect of it real quick, just because the NFL just said that they will not put players in a bubble. Saw it this morning, and because they said it's basically logistically not possible with how many players are in the league, which I agree with. I mean, that'd be extremely hard to be able to do. But at the same time, it really seems like the only way you can play is if there's a bubble. I mean, they're going to come in contact with a ton of people throughout the fall, which is flu season, which means the rate naturally is going to spike in the fall, just naturally. And it's, I mean,
you have to either go all in or all out. You got to either cancel the season or just take the risk and go for it.
I'm still hopeful we're going to have it. It's going to be
tough.
I'm hopeful. I don't think the bubble works either. I think you just got to stay on it aggressively. If you separate the players from their, which is sad to do, it's hard to do, but you got to separate the players from their families. You got to be extra careful with the older coaches. But the good news is, at the end of the day, if you're somebody under the age of 50, it's very likely this virus is not going to be a threat to you. The scary thing is how do we protect people who are older? So if we
that's what I'm saying. It's like what's the death rate of people under 40 of the playing age 20 to whatever it is 40. I guess you go 42 with Brady. But if the death rate is 0.00000 whatever it is, then you know what? Let's have some discrimination. If you're old, you can either take the risk or get out. We're going to replace you this year with somebody else. All staff and coaches and all that, or you're going to coach from a Zoom, or you're going to coach from, somewhere not on the field.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if the death rate is very, very low, and believe me, I'm not super conservative on this thing. I mean, I get it. It's an illness. But if it affects younger people differently than it affects older people or younger people or anybody with a health condition, an underlying health condition, then you know what? Expand the rosters, take your own risk if you're in that risk category, or don't. Okay. And maybe the league comes up with a stipend. Like if you're on, when a player goes on IR, he gets 60% of his salary, game check or something like that. So maybe at-risk people, coaches, staff, go on some sort of pseudo IR and they get paid 60%. You replace them with younger people. Yeah, it's discrimination. Yeah, it's probably against some kind of law. So they file a petition, try to get it granted in the interest of the economy, in the interest of the country, because sports is important. I mean, people are part of the reason for this, the cabin fever, is it got nothing to do inside. If there's football to watch inside, you're kind of okay sitting in front of the TV for 8 hours watching, what is it? What's the damn NFL network? I'm having a senior moment. Where they go from game to game. What
do you mean? Oh, Red Zone.
Red Zone. Yeah, I'm okay watching Red Zone for 8 hours a day, right? If it's on TV, I don't have cabin fever. So everybody talks about unprecedented times, call for unprecedented solutions. Well, put your money where your fucking mouth is and come up with something creative. Again, assuming that it doesn't affect young, healthy people. In terms of death, if you get it, you're out. We replace you with somebody else. If you're older,
I totally agree. I think it's because they're going to have to be creative. And the thing that concerns me is, as every league has gotten closer to return, every team sport, I feel like it's almost like the leagues are figuring out the logistical problems. The players are realizing how unprecedented it is. I mean, we're going to get to it with the NBA and how crazy some of the players aren't happy with their situation where they're basically quarantined in Orlando.
But football is different just because of the numbers of people involved. Basketball, you got 5 players on the court, you got 12-man rosters, you got 2 or 3 coaches, and then you got a bunch of guys running stats behind the bench. It's not a lot of people. Football, you got a 53-man roster, you've got probably 20 different coaches. It's just a super scale. It's
you got to add even more to that with the practice squad and all that.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to expand rosters to allow for people who are going to get sick. Okay. And you just go. You go roll with it. I mean, I'm sorry. Maybe you don't allow fans in the stands, or maybe whatever, 20% capacity. But let's get it going. And if you're sick, you're out. Sorry, you're going to be out for a month because, if you're out for 2 weeks, you just can't come back. You got to almost get yourself in shape. But football's different than basketball. It's just because of the number of people and, of course, the contact aspect of it. So, fuck it. Let's just go.
Yeah, we all in agreement rooting for sports for sure.
College is different because you're dealing with somebody's kid, but that's why I am very pessimistic on college sports. I think everybody.
I just talked to a couple D3 football players that Macon a couple days ago, and they're very skeptical now.
Well, D3,
beginning of the
D3
summer,
and D2 football is not going to happen, but at these big programs, it will happen because
I think you're going to find a way. I think you're going to find a way in the SEC. They're going to play in the SEC in a lot of these Big Ten schools. Yeah, it's going to be hard.
I think you're right about that, but there's almost no way financially for these small schools to be able to really accommodate for what actually needs to be done to be able to contain it. Because it could turn into huge outbreaks in these smaller schools where you can't afford at these smaller schools to test 3 times a week. You just can't.
Well, those smaller schools don't rely on the football money to run the school either. Like Alabama's relying on the $60 million a year that football generates.
Yeah,
and they just get more. I mean, the SEC TV contract dwarfs any TV contract by a 100-fold, however, by a ton over any of these smaller schools. Exactly. So it's not even fine. So they're going to take the financial risk to play football.
But that also means, like, for me, I'm not going to have my fall baseball probably. Like, just stuff like that. Like, it starts to affect so many different sports. Like, because if football happens, we aren't able to do anything. Like, that immediately shuts us down. Like, it shuts down any other spring sport from having a fall thing. It shuts down probably basketball from being able to practice early. You know what I mean? The trickle effect, as soon as one sport gets shut down, or, I mean, it's obviously going to be the complete fall or not. Like, they're not just going to say, okay, football play. They might in the SEC or ACC. They might just go say, fuck you guys. we need our money. So, but I would imagine like women's soccer will occur if football happens. They'll find a way to isolate them, because really, if you're able to isolate the football team and pull it together to be able to do the 150 players, probably 200 people per team at the college Division I college level, to be able to pull together the football season, then you'll be able to protect the 30 people on the soccer team too.
The
They're going to have to do that as well.
You guys touched on this maybe a few weeks ago. The NCAA isn't going to say one thing for Division III and a different thing for Division I. They're gonna say, here's the deal for fall sports. Here's what you have to do to be eligible as a program or something like that. They're not going to draw a distinction between the different colleges. Now, if the SEC says, you know what, NCAA, fuck you, we're going to go run our own gig, then that could happen. I mean, I think somebody alluded to.
That's what I think we're going to see.
You know, a month or so ago on the podcast, it could be at the end of the NCAA, and that could happen. But the devil's advocate to that is the Alabamas of the world and all that. They are in the public eye. I mean, they're akin to a professional team. So if they fuck it up, it could have big time repercussions in terms of, like, everybody wants to go to Alabama and Clemson now is in terms of enrollment, because they want that big college experience, right? You know, as a kid graduating high school, you see it on TV. I mean, that's marketing is football. Aside from the actual revenue that they bring in, that's the way they keep the train going. If they screw it up, you're a parent and you see that, you're not sending your kid there ever again. You're not even going to consider it. So there's another side to that money story, that if they decide to play and half the team gets sick and a kid dies, just one. That's all it takes, is just one.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah,
if one person dies in the fall, an athlete that got it from playing the sport, it is over for the year. Not just the fall, it's over for the year.
Well, so I'm not an NCAA advocate anyway. If I'm a 5-star recruit and if I'm getting drafted in the NFL draft regardless, these guys aren't paying me anyway. What the fuck am I going to play for? I'm not risking it.
That's a good point too.
That's a good point. You know, if you're who's the quarterback for Clemson? What's his face? I mean,
Trevor
Lorin.
It's tough to tell your teammates sorry. It's tough, right? But this is a different animal you're dealing with. And that's why I say, I really, some people want to slam the media for a lot of things. The stats coming out on this thing are just, it's all skewed to positive tests. I want to hear who's dying, what underlying conditions they had, how old they are, that whole thing. Because if people are recovering, I want to hear recovery rates, because that's the side that you're not hearing.
Well, outside of football, I don't care about the case number. I care about the hospitalization rate and the death rate, same as you. I don't care about how many people test positive. I want to know, what's the percentage chance of you dying?
Right. Well, I mean, no one really wants to get sick, and you certainly don't want to get severely sick, right? It's not fun when that happens, right? But yeah, at some point you want to hear some recovery stats to understand what the risk is. Right now, the risk of getting it, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to get the flu, right? And this is kind of worse than the flu, or maybe it isn't. I don't know. People have it and they're asymptomatic. They're just, the information coming out is just terrible. And
yeah, and I think for people, so I saw a graphic from freopp.org, and I got to verify this. So this could be wrong, but for people 15 to 24, they're actually this is according to 150,000, assuming 150,000 COVID-19 deaths. And if you continue at the rate you've seen, people who are 15 to 24 are actually 1.26 times more likely to die from the flu than from COVID. But then when it gets to 25 to 34, they're 2.18 times more likely to die from COVID. And then from about 35 to 74 is where the COVID to flu ratio, COVID's a much larger risk. Then when you get older than that, basically you're about 2.5 times more likely than greater than 85. You're about 1.7 times more likely. I think it just kind of reiterates that for younger people, it's definitely a low risk. And if you can, like you said, keep people who are higher risk away from or prevent them being at risk, it's definitely something to consider. But the other hand is, a lot of these, I remember reading one column, a lot of these college football players, I mean, I know a lot of them are best athletes around, but some of these linemen, 330 pounds, 340 pounds, would they be considered at risk a little bit with underlying conditions potentially? Maybe one or two of them, or
I think going back to it, all that it takes is one, right? One death and everything's done. So And the thing about underlying conditions, they're underlying. You may not even know you have them yet. So let's say someone doesn't even know they have asthma yet. They get this disease. They're a 360-pound lineman, a little overweight for their body. Their heart's already
Well,
working
that's more
hard.
than a little.
I mean,
You see linemen though out there that are not maybe not 360, but it's something to keep an eye on because, like I said, when you're you can't take the risk.
You want to put it in context of how many kids have died of heat exhaustion, over the last couple of years.
Yep.
It's whatever it is. It's 3 or 4 too many. Obviously, it hits home close in Terp country, but it
Yep.
happens all over the country. But there's a lack of education on the training staff here. Everybody's got the information, but and once you get it, you just can't treat it with an ice bath. So there's some similarities, there's some differences, but I really think there needs to be better information coming out on recovery, who's recovering, who's dying, what their issues were or are, how old they are, that kind of thing. So you can make better informed decisions. Because right now everybody's scared shitless. Everybody's, you're planning for the worst, and the worst is going to be we're not playing, and because it's just a lack of information. And when it's human nature, you're very fearful of what you don't know. And, enough people have died, okay, and enough people have been tested and have it to be able to produce some meaningful stats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think the scary thing that came out really over this last week was the Oklahoma 30 players, the Clemson 23 players.
Phillies
the
camp.
Houston had to shut down their
spring training.
Pro sports is a lot more. Pro sports can control this a lot better. But we talked about this like a month ago. There's only football players on campus right now. When they get back to school and everyone's back on campus, this thing could go really bad, really fast for all athletes because they can't isolate themselves. And that's why I think we're talking a different animal with college than pro. And I think pro sports, NFL, I'm staying hopeful. I think there's an 80% chance the season happens. I'm starting to think college football is under the 50% chance to happen. I would say SEC is probably at like a 60% chance just because the SEC is going to pull out all the stops to be able to at least give them conference play.
Well, honestly, I would rather have no football than just the SEC because, if there's going to be college football, I want every major conference to play.
Yeah, I need the Mountain West.
I don't even care about a national championship if just SEC teams are playing.
Well, it's funny.
It won't be a national championship.
Yeah, every school is sending kids home at Thanksgiving, right? You're going to do your exams online. Why is that? They're anticipating something bad happening in the fall, a spike rate, whatever. They don't want kids coming back. So you're telling me football players are going to stay on campus and they're going to try to finish the season out? Forget about the play. Like, you want to watch it because of the sense of competition, but there's also that sense of finality of wanting to see a champion, right? You're playing for something. You're not just playing for fun. And if the likelihood that they're going to be a playoff or a national championship, which, you got to put it at less than 10%, right? Right now.
Yeah, I don't see the point of even having a season if we're not going to get a national championship.
All right, well, let's get away from this topic because we'll probably go till 8:00 at night if we keep going at this,
and it's making me depressed.
Yeah, let's get on to an even more depressing topic: the MLB lockout.
Yeah. I was just gonna say we can either go to the MLB lockout or some MVP odds.
We'll get to that after. We'll get to that right after.
All right, let's hit it. All right, well, let's go to the MLB lockout with what's going on in baseball. Baseball, the players and the owners decided that they were going to be a little bit closer this week together.
Unfortunately, the MLB lockout. Oh, sorry, Zach. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say with the MLB lockout, we got baited this week. Rod Manfred flew out to Arizona to meet with Tony Clark, the head of the Players Association. And there was once again, the owners and players, there was a miscommunication. Rob Manfred believed that they came to an agreement over a 60-game season with fully prorated salaries, a 16-team playoff, and a DH in both leagues. The players did not agree. They misinterpreted. So we're back to square one. So this whole thing started because the players and owners misinterpreted the language of the March agreement. The players believed they were entitled to fully prorated salaries regardless of whether there's fans in the stands based on that March agreement, and the owners did not feel that way based on the language. So here we are. We're back to that situation. The players countered with 70 games, fully prorated, but very similar, and the sides are about $250 million apart. And I'm annoyed. Honestly, both sides are in the wrong, but I'm annoyed at the players right now because every player, Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, Trevor Bauer, so many guys on Twitter this week, all they could tweet out, when and where, tell us when and where, we want to play. So Major League Baseball made a pretty big concession to go to fully prorated over a 60-game season. And all of a sudden, they send this ridiculous counteroffer that's not even, they didn't even try to make a concession. So obviously when and where isn't what they believe. They want to win this negotiation. They don't want to compromise at all. And I'm annoyed. As a baseball fan, I'm very upset by it.
Well, this is just going to leak into when the CBA's up. I mean, it's just going to be another shit show in a year when they have to renegotiate the CBA.
Yeah,
It is.
We're seeing a 2-year lockout. If they don't play this year, I think
Because what's going to happen? Well, so what's going to happen is Manfred's going to unilaterally impose a season. That was in their March agreement. So if that happens, the MLB Players Association will then have the permission. They then can legally file a grievance according to the CBA. And if they file a grievance, it's going to be full war. You're going to have arbitrators looking at it, and it's going to be a disaster. It's sad. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm at the point with baseball that I'm as big of a baseball fan as anybody, but I'm going to be a little less interested if they just continue this and don't want to come to an agreement. Because at the end of the day, you can argue which side's up, but it's millionaires and billionaires bickering during a pandemic when millions of people have lost their jobs and lost loved ones, and it's very disappointing.
Extremely disappointing. And we touched on it last week that the MLB could be pulling in ratings that they've never seen before. They could be pulling.
I don't know about that.
What do you mean? There's no other sports.
Yeah, but you know what, though?
On a Wednesday night, what else are you watching?
I agree with you, but this whole idea that baseball needs to pull in these new fans and new ratings, they're fine. Okay, they don't need.
Well, no one
it's just about them playing.
But if they're only competing against golf right now, come on, dude.
But they weren't going to come back now.
There's going to be so many people that come and tune in. There's nothing else going on. They're just going to catch an MLB game and say, "Hey, okay, this is more interesting than I ever thought it could be."
Did you expect them to come back now?
They've been talking about this since April.
But the NBA's not coming back until July 31st. What do you mean? They're not going to be playing now. This whole fantasy of bringing in new fans because they were playing in June is not happening.
Yeah, but
they had to work out more than the other sports.
Back in June, they were saying that they were going to start on the 4th of July. We're less than 2 weeks away from that now.
Well, yeah, that's not happening now. It's unfortunate. I wish they were going to start on the 4th of July, but this idea that they were going to be playing in June and, they're going to bring in all these new fans. People who like baseball. People who don't like it. I mean, it's more about the players and owners abandoning the actual baseball fans and not getting this done.
I mean, I agree with you, Rugg. I think, though, that the opportunity without having fans in the stands is the opportunity to mic coaches and interview players during the game. And that's how you bring in fans, is you get beyond just the product on the field. You get into the mental aspect of baseball, which is, to the average baseball fan, highly interesting, but to the non-fan, it helps them learn the game, and then they could become interested. Baseball to somebody who really doesn't understand the game is boring because of how slow it is. But if you start miking players and miking coaches and the bullpen coach and everything going on between pitches, that's how you can attract new fans. And
that's
to me,
true.
The opportunity there is so huge. I mean, look, when you're watching that Phil Tiger thing with Brady and Manning, because they're all mic'd up and you hear Justin Thomas and you hear Phil giving coaching, that's every freaking sport could be doing that right now. It's it's great TV. It's tremendous, right? I mean, it's
golf is doing it right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Golf is doing it right now. Golf is doing it right now.
And that's what they're talking about doing that in the NFL. They're going to do that in the NFL this year, too. Every single player is going to be
golf isn't miking players. They just got microphones near players.
No. Golf is
they mic'd a couple of them.
Golf is miking like 2 players around.
Yeah, like Ricky Fowler was mic'd during the Charles Schwab.
They should mic all of them, because it was like when NASCAR started putting cameras on cars, they would only do a few of them. And certainly they had to pay the teams because it would create more drag on the cars. It would make the cars slower. So what they do, they put a camera on every car so it's equal. Well, a player doesn't want to have a microphone attached to his hip or his back because it's uncomfortable when you swing. It's extra weight. It throws your balance off. Even a millimeter makes a huge difference on a 250-yard shot. So what do? Mic every player. Make it equal for everybody, and you hear everything. To me, it would just be awesome. Just awesome for sports. But yeah, they can't get their shit together and fucking agree on let's go. I mean, once it gets below 50 games for baseball, the Orioles start to have a real chance to win. I mean,
it's going to be like the 1989 Orioles all over again.
It's like, yeah, so let's fucking go, man. Like, jeez Louise, fuck rubbing down baseballs. Fuck all that shit. Dude, I was watching golf the other day, and I don't know what player it was. He was in between a shot. He, spit on the ground. Oh my God, we can't spin in baseball. Fuck that shit. Okay, let's play baseball. You're young, take the risk, and let's go. If a player doesn't want to take the risk, they opt out. Trust me. There's thousands of players in the minor leagues that would love to take the risk.
That's true too. I mean, it's bad. They'll take better pay. As minor league players, of course, are paid horribly. So if they could play for the major league minimum, they would do it in a second.
Yeah, I mean the scab season or whatever it was when the Redskins won, people still fucking watched. Okay, it was sports. You still watched, and there were stories about the players. It would be the same thing. Fuck, you don't want to play? Fuck you, we're playing. Okay, and you just go.
I agree.
Amen to that. I want baseball back, especially.
All right, let's move it on to our AFC West preview. You want to start it off, Rug?
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, obviously with the AFC West, I think we are all in agreement who the division winner is going to be. The Chiefs have not lost much at all. Their offense is still as explosive as ever. And the thing about the Chiefs, too, is their defense, it's not great, but it's well coached. They got Chris Jones still rushing the passer. Their safety combo of Tyrann Mathieu and Juan Thornhill, who actually got hurt last year, is really good. It's one of the best safety duos in football. So their middle of the field coverage is pretty solid at the back end. Their linebacking core is weak, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to improve their offense. They're going to win this division. This division is all about the 2, 3, and 4. I mean, you could argue that 2, 3, and 4 are very close, but as I read through the rosters,
I think 2 and 3 is really close. I think 2 and 3.
I tend to agree. I don't know if we'll agree who 4 will be. Do we agree the Chargers are 4?
I don't.
Yeah,
I think the Raiders are 4.
Okay, yeah, I disagree with that. I got to be honest with you. As I look through, go ahead, Mark.
There's a big apostrophe next to it because I don't know what Justin Herbert's going to do. If Justin Herbert's half decent, I think they have a real shot of making it into the wild card round. I really do.
Did you say apostrophe or did you mean asterisk?
Yeah, I meant asterisk. Sorry, I meant asterisk.
You said
my words mixed up. Asterisk. Huge asterisk by the Chargers. Sorry about that, guys. But if I don't like the Justin Herbert pick at all. Don't get me wrong. But if Justin Herbert's better than what I think he's going to be, then I think this defense is loaded. I think it's the most athletic defense in the NFL.
It is a loaded defense, and that's where you could see, are they going to be like the defense, good running game, and they've actually improved their offensive line with Brian Bulaga and with Trey Turner at guard. So if they can do this formula of big arm quarterback, good running game, great defense, well, as a Ravens fan, I can relate to that. It sounds like the 2008 Ravens went to the AFC Championship game, but I don't think it's going to happen because I like Anthony Lynn, but in a way, he's kind of being set up to be a lame duck coach. If it's make or break for the Chargers this year, they're one of those organizations. They just always have a ton of injuries.
Well, I like Anthony Lynn. I just think last year was just a bad season. Phillip Rivers was old and he had a noodle arm, threw more interceptions than he did touchdowns. I think it was time to move on, but I don't think Justin Herbert was the right replacement.
I think all three of you guys are analyzing this the wrong way. According to Riggio, you have to look at the backup quarterback because the team is only as good as their backup quarterback. So who's the backup in Kansas City?
I have no idea.
I think it's Chad Henne.
Chad Henne. And who's the backup in do they even have a backup in San Diego?
I think it's going to be Tyrod Taylor if Herbert
San Diego anymore. They abandoned San Diego.
Riggio will take Tyrod Taylor over Chad Henne any day. Right?
I think all of them would.
That's how fucking stupid Riggio's comment was, okay?
It really was. We definitely got about it because it was I think he was just repeating like a football cliche.
Of course he was. Of course he was. What happened is the backup quarterback at Northwest High School was getting bored or was all butthurt, and New Beiser went over to him and said, we're only as good as you are. And Riggio took that and never forgot it. Okay?
That's a fair.
Watch San Diego beat fucking Kansas City for the championship.
They might, based on that logic, but
right.
in all seriousness, though, as I was looking through these rosters, I was sleeping on the Oakland Raiders. They actually are building something very interesting.
I don't know about that
because. If we go, so we'll start with Derek Carr, the quarterback and the coach. Derek Carr, I think, is whatever you think of Jake Locke or Drew Lock, excuse me, whatever he might be this season. I think Derek Carr is still the second best QB in the division. John Gruden, I think, is the second best head coach in the division, and I think he still has the potential to be a pretty good coach. But they're building a nice team.
Yeah,
They're building a really.
They drafted 3 receivers in the first 3 rounds.
I mean, first of all, Henry Ruggs, giving John Gruden that number 1 receiver is so important in his offense, but to complement Tyrell Williams, that physical target, Hunter Renfrow over the middle, Darren Waller, one of the better tight ends in football now, Josh Jacobs running the ball, and they're actually building a heck of a D-line with Max Crosby, who had 10 sacks last year, and Cleveland Farrell's going to probably break out and step forward. They got Malik Collins at D-tackle, I think, at 12 sacks last year. They brought in Jeff Heath from the Cowboys to play safety. They brought in Corey Littleton to play linebackers, one of the most versatile linebackers in football. Jonathan Ibrahim, their young stud safety, is coming back. I mean, Eli Apple you could get worse than him. They even brought in Jason Witten. His
Drafted
leadership.
Damon Arnett in the first round too, the corner out of Ohio State.
Yeah, they're building.
What's their line look like though?
It's still pretty good. They got Rodney Hudson. Trent Brown, who they got at left tackle last year,
most overpaid lineman ever.
Well, that's what they said, but he actually had an excellent season. He's actually doing well. Richie Incognito is still productive. They're building a really nice roster. And I think they're going to be the second best team in that division. I think they were held back. Now, last year, they were not a good football team. I think they were lucky to even win what they won. But when I look at what they're assembling, I think they actually are going to be the second best teams. They have the best combination of talent and veteran leadership, whereas the Broncos might be a year. I think the Broncos might be a year away still. It's a lot.
I think this division's really competitive. But I still think the Broncos are going to edge out the Raiders at the end of the day.
It's going to be close. And really, the problem with the Broncos and Chargers is you have so much high variance around their young quarterbacks. So Drew Lock's in position to succeed, but do we know for sure? We don't know exactly.
That's exactly what I said about the gambling about the Rookie of the Year. Was are you trusting Drew Lock to put up the numbers for Jerry Jeudy? And I think it comes to the same. Are you trusting Drew Lock to take that team to a playoff appearance this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I almost do trust Derek Carr a little bit more than Drew Lock, but I just think I don't know. I mean, you listed some great names in that Raiders defense, some veteran experience.
They're putting together a team, not just on defense, but on offense. They're putting together a good roster. I don't think I even realized it. I mean, I knew all those names, but when I was looking at it and seeing what they're putting together, they actually have a lot there, more than you'd think. Because the Raiders haven't had a good defense or a great defense in years. Yeah, I mean, no one outside of, I guess Las Vegas now or Oakland could really say anything noteworthy about their defense outside of Khalil Mack for many years. But another thing to talk about is that Khalil Mack trade actually wasn't as bad as people acted like it was at the time. Did they get 3 first-rounders out of that? I mean, was it 2 or 3? I think they got 3.
No, I think it was 2 first-rounders and a second or third. I can't remember. I think it
was at least 3 picks
and a third. But I can't remember if that third pick was a second or third rounder.
But regardless, it was a heck of I think it wasn't as bad of a trade. People act like the sky was falling. I mean, if you could trade a pass rusher for that much, I mean, they're making the most out of it now.
That's what people think they're going to get for what's his name?
Jamal Adams?
Yeah, we were just talking about him. Yeah, Jamal Adams. That's what people think he's going to get for Jamal Adams, 2 first-rounders at least.
And now a safety, I would say a safety like Jamal Adams is more valuable than Khalil Mack as a pass rusher.
Well, me and you are on opposing arguments for this. I still think pass rusher is more important than corner and safety.
I think, this is a long debate. We could have another day, but in essence, I think the coverage unit of a defense is always going to be more valuable than a pass rush. I mean, the best example of that is what the Ravens did last year. The Ravens had one of the worst pass rushing units, worst pressure rates with 4-man rushes in the NFL. Same with the Patriots.
You guys blitzed over 60% of your plays on defense.
But why could we do that, though? Because our secondary was excellent. It starts in the back of the defense. And Khalil Mack, the Raiders have not had consistent coverage, and I think trading Khalil Mack and boosting their overall team has turned out to be a good decision, especially since you don't want to pay him and Derek Carr a crazy amount of money.
I think it's all dependent on schemes and the talent you have on your roster.
One thing that you have to consider in football, and it's pretty much true in a lot of other sports, is the quality of the organization as a whole, ownership on down. Because I think what people really don't realize with football and with every professional sport, but mostly with football, is these guys go to work every day. They get 2 days off. They get Monday off, and I think they get Maybe they just get one day off. I forget what it is.
I think they get Saturdays off.
They do walkthroughs on Saturday, but they all walk into the building to lift for meetings and all that kind of stuff. That's where they all go to work. And if you ever been in a, I mean, you guys haven't been in kind of the real world with work, but if you go into a building where your leaders are retards and they're idiots and you don't respect them, you don't get maximum performance out of any player. And that's why organizations like the Steelers, like the Patriots, like even the Ravens, I'll give you a shout out, Rug, are successful every year. And it's the reason why the fucking Redskins and the Raiders and Tampa Bay, they suck every year no matter what type of roster they have. Because organizationally, they suck. They have poor leadership, and like the secretary or down to the janitor, down to the cafeteria worker, they just have bad attitudes. And that you can't go to work and live in an environment that day and perform your best. Now, professional athletes are trying to be professional. When they hit the field, they try to flip the switch, but it wears on you. And it's why these teams seem to have more injuries than others. Okay, and you see it with the New York Knicks. You see it with the Baltimore Orioles. You see it with the Washington Redskins. Poorly run organizations don't perform well year in and year out. And it's why well-run organizations tend to be competitive year in and year out. So what's the best run organization in the AFC West? We're probably furthest away from it, but it's probably the Chiefs. I mean,
for sure.
Well, I don't know about that. It's definitely the Broncos historically until.
Are you talking about right now or? The Chiefs are story. The Chiefs have always been competitive.
No,
they just couldn't win that
Bowlen's
big game.
been a great owner for the Broncos. Unfortunately,
he is. No, you're right.
He passed away 2 years ago.
So regarding this discussion,
he had 7 Super Bowl appearances before he died 2 years ago.
You're right. But regarding this discussion, regarding these second 3 teams for second place, you're right. You could make the argument for the Broncos. Based on that logic,
Elway is part of that equation, and the book is still out on him. He's trying to build an organization his way. And what's he in his 5th year this year as a GM?
More than that, because he was the GM for Super Bowl 50 and Peyton Manning before that too.
Yeah, I think he got there. I think the year or two before Peyton first got to the Broncos.
So, I mean, I'm not saying he's good or he's bad. It's just like he's not Ozzie Newsome, right? He's not. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but I always that's something people really they look at players on the field. You're not going to get the best out of the players if they're walking into a negative type of atmosphere day in and day out. And Joe Public just doesn't really understand that. Baseball is a little different because you don't go to an office building, you go to the park. And your practice is the day before is the 3 hours before the game where you're taking hitting practice and infield, outfield, and all that kind of stuff. So you're just around players. You're not around football. They walk into a building. They have more meetings than anybody, and they're there. And there's a cafeteria, and that's how they eat. Baseball guys just show up and take ground balls and they play, and they'll watch film on their own. Basketball, I don't know what basketball does. They have some meetings every now and then, but there's so much travel there. They don't do football. It's one game a week. They're home. They're walking into that building. Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it's just different. So you got shitty ownership, you're going to have just mediocre at best play.
Yep, I agree 100%. That's it for our coverage on the AFC West. I think we're going to move on to NFC. We'll put out a poll to see what you guys want to do next week. But let's move on to some MVP favorites for next year. Coming in.
Do we want to do MVP favorites right now, or do we want to wait and hold that for next week?
Let's end it with MVP.
All right.
Okay, let's end it with MVP. All right, sounds good.
All right, so coming up as the favorite is Patrick Mahomes at plus 350. Do you guys think that number is good?
It's a fair number. I can't say it's a bad number.
Yeah.
I think it's always the pressure on him is going to be so high and the expectations are going to be so high that I think I would hesitate laying it, but you can't go wrong with Patrick Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in football and the best offense in football with the best supporting cast. So anyone who's taken that number, I totally get it.
All right.
And he's going to win MVP at some point. It's going to happen. So.
And then we got Lamar Jackson at number 2 at plus 600. And I'm personally not a fan of this. I don't see him winning back-to-back MVPs, but I think he's definitely going to be in the discussion for it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's a big challenge to win back-to-back MVPs, but I think at plus 600, you could make the argument that he has the raw talent. He could put up the same type of numbers when you combine his rushing as Mahomes. You could make that argument, so maybe you could argue in relative to the plus 350 that you could take it, but like Mark said, back-to-back MVPs, it is rare, It's tough to do. I think Lamar wouldn't be my number one choice either.
I just don't like betting these long-term things because it's like who has the most headlines at that point in time. It's just a popularity contest. Like I don't like who's going to vote for the Pro Bowl MVP or something like that. I don't like betting
Well, wait,
like that.
are you saying Lamar's MVP was a popularity contest?
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, he had great numbers, but there's definitely other people that were deserving of it, like Russell Wilson.
But there's always other people that you could make the argument for, but Lamar put up the best statistical numbers, and he had the best impact on his team and the best overall statistical
Well, I don't agree with that. I think Russell Wilson had a better season with the talent around him. I think he was more valuable to his team than Lamar Jackson was last year.
Sure, you could make that argument based on wins above replacement analytics, but Lamar Jackson had the best statistical season. So it's just how you measuring value.
So, the one thing, again, with football, if they get one injury on the offensive line at left tackle, it's over, right? So, go look at Carson Wentz's numbers today versus what they were before the injury. I'm sure they're worse, right, in terms of the odds of him winning anything. So, if you're gonna place a bet, you look at O-line and you look at O-line depth. But Lamar Jackson, to me, aside from that, even though it's his third year, it's really it's going to be his sophomore year in terms of playing. I think he takes a step backwards. I think you see the sophomore slump with Lamar, and here's why. Because last year when he played, it was more like, let's just let Lamar be Lamar, right? And now you realize how good he was, and when now we have to protect the investment, are you really going to have that same kind of attitude towards Lamar, or are you going to start feeding him a little bit more scheme, a little bit more coverage, reading coverages and things like that, and try to make him a little more cerebral? And if that's the case, that's where guys always take a step back in their sophomore year, because they're trying to process a lot more information than the year prior. Because that first year, they're just trying to go play and make plays. And so that's why I think Mahomes really, if he could take a leap, I think he takes another leap forward for Mahomes because he's past that. And I think Lamar enters that aspect of really trying to learn the position of being a quarterback in the NFL, which is a tremendous amount of information.
Well,
I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm just saying when you're at your best, you just react. If you have to take time to think, it's over. It happens too fast in the NFL.
Well, normally I'd agree with you, but Patrick Mahomes is a special guy. I mean, he won Super Bowl in his sophomore year.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick Mahomes did say before at the early beginning of the season, now he just learned how to read defenses, and he did take a little bit. I mean, by his standards, took a little bit of a step back early on, and he got hurt. It slowed down a little bit before he broke out. So there's some truth to the sophomore slump. But the good thing with Lamar's ability to process information and go through progressions has always been fantastic. And I think I'm confident that he'll do his part. I want to make sure the Ravens coaching staff is going to properly innovate the offense and stay a step ahead of defensive coordinators who are working the entire offseason to figure out if there's a formula to slow Lamar down.
What's the numbers on Brady?
Plus 1,600.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy with Mike Evans. He's got an experienced coach in Bruce Arians, right? I mean, if Arians and Brady don't butt heads, it'll be interesting. I mean, the Bucs organization just is terrible. That ownership group is just shitty. But with Arians and Brady there, they may be able to tell everybody else, just block all that bullshit out and let's go win. And with Mike Evans and that defense coming on, again, trying to win MVP is so many things have to go right. Your defense has to give you the ball. If the defense is giving up 16 play drives, you don't touch the ball that much as an offensive player.
Well, it's going to help that they're not going to have quarterback Jameis Winston throw 30 picks and lose 10 fumbles this year.
If Brady takes them to the Super Bowl or even to the divisional championship, the conference championship, he's going to be in that discussion.
I think Brady plus 1,600 is a steal. I love that.
So do I. That offense is loaded. They got 3 really good tight ends: Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, both Pro Bowlers. I mean, that offense is really.
It's loaded. A reaction because people think that it's Brady's fault that the offense struggled last season in New England. I don't think that's the case. I think he was on a really lousy offense with the receivers that couldn't create any separation in an offensive line that was full of injuries. And yes, he's declined a little bit. He can't carry a team anymore, but if you give him weapons, what he has, he might have a top 3 supporting cast in football. I think at plus 1,600, he might be my favorite bet. Him and Russell Wilson might be my favorite MVP picks. going into next
Russell
season.
Wilson is right behind Lamar at plus 800. And before we touch on that, what was really surprising was Deshaun Watson had better favorites than Tom Brady at plus 1,400.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Not a knock on Deshaun, but it's just not.
Who's he throwing to? Who's he throwing to?
He's throwing to. It's not that he's throwing to bad receivers. I mean, Brandon Cooks and Kenny Stills and Will Fuller.
Yeah, he doesn't have DeAndre anymore.
But it's just they're all the same type of receiver. Where's the big physical receiver? Like, I don't know, DeAndre Hopkins that they traded away? Their tight end position's mediocre, and I don't trust Bill O'Brien to run a good offense. Their defense is lousy. I'll
tell you
plus
the
14.
I'll tell you the other thing to look at before you make a bet is to look at the first half of the season, because the likelihood that the second half actually finishes. So if you're gonna think about an offensive player, look at the schedule. And if you think it's a light schedule, I would start to lean towards those players, because I don't see the season going.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's true. Would they cancel?
What if the season gets? Would it cancel the bet? What would happen?
They do it. They probably do. That's a good question. I mean, who knows what they
would probably give the MVP if they got like 8 games in.
I think if they're giving MVP, you get your money back, right? It becomes no bet. You get your money back.
Yeah.
Probably.
Does the bookies?
I think that is a good point. You want to look at the first half to make sure that they have a obtainable first half to go get stats.
Well, yeah, it also depends if you're betting legally, if you're betting for a backdoor random guy, and that'll also matter because I'm sure a lot of our audience who is making these bets has different strategies for getting these out there.
So the other way to go would be to look at defensive player, because defenses are always ahead of the offenses, and the fact that these guys haven't been together, for God knows how long, in terms of just getting timing down, new quarterbacks with new receivers and just getting all the hand signals and the eye contact and all that down. You start looking at defensive players combined with the schedule, the first half schedule. What's a Khalil Mack at? What's an Aaron Donald at?
Well, our first quarterback doesn't even come, or our first non-quarterback doesn't even come in until after 10. Saquon Barkley is the favorite outside of quarterback at plus 3,000.
I'll pass on that.
No shanks.
Where's our first defensive player?
Hold on, I'm still scrolling.
Is there? You probably got to go pretty far.
Yep, I'm still going.
You're gonna get a blister.
It's Nick Bosa at plus 10,000 is the first one that popped up.
That's not bad. I mean, look at San Francisco's schedule for the first 4 games. I mean, so that you bet $10 to win 1,000?
That's just absurd. Yeah. Chase Young and Nick Bosa have better odds than Khalil Mack.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack at plus 15,000.
Yeah, that's actually insane. Plus 15,000 for. Are there any safeties or linebackers?
I haven't seen one yet.
I guess pass rusher is always the defense, because when a pass rusher, because sacks in a lot of way are fluky. When a pass rusher gets on a roll and starts racking up sacks, that's where they can.
What if a defensive player won on a shortened season early in the season because offenses just weren't in tune coming out of the break?
There's not even a corner or safety on this list. The bottom of the list is a tight end at plus 30,000.
Zach Ertz, thanks on the tight end.
And Travis Kelce,
Aaron Donald,
30,000
plus 15,000. I would take a shot at that if I'm taking
Chase
a
Young.
player.
Chase Young and Nick Bosa both have better odds than Aaron Donald. I don't know how that makes sense at all.
Aaron Donald's probably the best he could be the best defensive player in football.
The problem is Aaron Donald gets triple teamed, right? So unless who's the guy on the other side, they could have I think Oakland has got the kid out of Clemson, their first rounder last year, but they had Khalil Mack before they let him go. That's why he started to get good. What we saw last year, though, out of the gate, I think we saw some pretty high-scoring games for like the first 4 games, and then defenses kind of caught up with the innovations of what the offenses were doing, and then we had a bunch of low-scoring games for like the games 5 through whatever 10, something like that, and then it kind of evened out. But I'd say if you're going to place bets, man, look at like a 10-game season, look at the schedule, and
Well, just how the rules are set up, I'm not betting a defensive player to win MVP.
Yeah, that's the problem. You can't really bet defensive.
What's the over under of the season finishing 16 games? I'd take that bet.
That's a great.
I don't think there's odds out on that yet.
That'd be a great prop. I mean, That would be a great prop to take. You're just sitting there praying in week 14. Oh, cases spike 6%. Come on, call it. Like you're just.
Hey, bet unders. How about betting unders on every team and then just hoping it's a shortened season?
Oh yeah, you're betting unders on the win totals. That would be hilarious.
I just hate betting unders in general because if it's like college basketball, I'm sitting there sweating for 2 hours.
Well, sometimes betting unders in college basketball is fun because these kids just do the stupidest shit. Well, especially Maryland games, taking unders with them, they just forget how to play offense for periods of the game.
Everyone knows the Maryland statistic. You wait until the second half and you live them at plus 8,000 to come back down 20, and that shit hits. But that's going to do it for our podcast this week. We want to thank everyone for tuning in and giving us a listen. Remember, please subscribe on your preferred listening platform and leave us a review if you can. And please, we want those listeners' questions, so please look at the email in the description and go ahead and shoot your questions our way. Thank you guys for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your week.